Hey everyone, this is Alec back with Home and Rehab, and what I wanted to talk about today was a topic that we've been seeing in research since about when I was in grad school, and that is something known as blood flow restriction training. It sounds a little bit crazy, but we're going to talk about the science behind it, what it does, and when we are going to be most likely to use it. So the concept behind blood flow restriction training is that we are going to take something like a blood pressure cuff and place it around one of the major arteries that supplies a whole lot of blood to a region. The reason we do this is actually relatively simple. Your body responds in order to build strength by responding to the amount of perceived stress in a region that it undergoes during a workload. So, for example, when I'm lifting weights, if I lift something X amount of times at X weight, my body uses the nerves in the region to detect how much work I did and tries to build it back and be more resilient. We've thought for a long time that, it's micro tears being repaired that is part of what's strengthening us, and that does seem to be partially true. But we find that one of the more important aspects of this is very simply how much strain the body detects that it is under. So, what we have also learned then is if we partially restrict the amount of blood supply to a region, the body perceives the strain as more intensive. Essentially, as I'm attempting to lift a weight, if I'm not able to get as much energy to the region, my body is going to attempt to make that region more resilient to the weight I'm lifting faster. Now, this works under some circumstances better than others, and the current research is showing that this is mostly best for people who have profound weakness in a limb that is not able to support a standard amount of weight. So, essentially what we are trying to do with blood flow restriction training is increase the rate at which we are able to gain muscle mass or muscle strength and resilience during a workout. But the circumstances in which it works are very important to analyze. So I wanted to talk about some of the experiments we've done and what their findings are so you can learn whether or not blood flow restriction training seems to be right for you. Now, the research is changing constantly, so as things do evolve and more research comes out on this, it's going to be important to continue to analyze it and see, hey, can we apply this to more areas? Because this is a relatively young area of research. Like I said, this started back when I was in grad school and I'm a little baby at times. So it's important to take a look at, all right, what's coming next? What's still in the pipeline? So the research that we've been seeing in terms of blood flow restriction training takes a look at when I restrict my blood flow to a certain percentage and I work it within a load, what I'm trying to work it at is approximately about 30% of what we call our 1 repetition maximum. Now, a repetition maximum, or a 1 RM, is trying to find the absolute amount of weight I can lift only one time before completely exhausting myself for any given muscle group. I take the percentage of that, in this case 30%, and use that as my workload. Now that sounds like an extremely low number, and that is absolutely correct. But what we have found is someone who has some sort of injury, for example, if they have a tendonitis, tendinopathy, a muscle tear, something like that, where they're not able to lift at the maximum load like we normally would to build up muscle. If we partially restrict blood flow to that region and lift at this lighter weight, we can increase the amount of perceived strain the muscle has, therefore increasing its amount of return for that workout, without increasing the load too quickly and putting the muscle in danger of further injury. This is extremely important to us because, for a lot of cases that we see in rehab, people are unable to lift as much as they normally would because of the pain they're in, whether it's because of a nerve irritation or a tendinopathy like we've mentioned before, or a tear, something like that. So, what we are attempting to do then in the research is say, all right, if I'm taking the same weight and I'm lifting 30% of my 1 RM without restriction and with restriction, do I actually gain strength faster than I would have otherwise? And the answer is, we absolutely do. So this is great news for people who are in a rehab program where they're really having to lift in a submaximal point. This is great for people who had a repair of certain tendons. So especially distal tendons, like something in my forearm, in my arm, or somewhere more distal in my lower extremity like my Achilles. This is a great way in order to increase the how fast I'm going to be able to make important gains in the early stages of rehab when, for safety, I'm not able to push out as strong as I would like to. Now, on the other hand, one of the things that we have seen is this has become popularized into people trying to put it into general weightlifting practice. Aside from the obvious safety concerns of wanting to make sure that you're doing this under a certified individual, the other things that we found is that it doesn't seem to quite match up to what we're able to do overall. When I restrict the energy supply to a region, the overall amount I'm able to lift is actually decreased, which makes a whole lot of sense. If I don't have the fuel to do it, I can't get the output I'm looking for. So, if I am lifting weight under heavy load, say my 1 RM is 100 pounds to make our math easy, and I'm trying to lift at 60 to 70% of that. Without blood flow restriction, that's relatively doable, but a lot of people find that when we restrict blood flow, they absolutely cannot do that. So the next experiment that we look at is, all right, if I take the maximum load I can safely lift with blood flow restriction, and the maximum load I could lift without blood flow restriction, and I do those two workouts, which one is of more benefit? And it seems like the one where I'm lifting higher load, which unfortunately means without blood flow restriction, is going to give me faster gains overall. So what that means for me if I'm working out for fitness is, unless there's something preventing me from lifting my normal load like an injury, blood flow restriction at this time does not appear to apply as well as if I were trying to do that otherwise. Now this makes a whole lot of sense, because what we're talking about again is overall accumulated stress. So if I'm only able to lift 30% of my load because of a restriction after, let's say, a biceps tendon repair, I need to stay within that 30%. But if I decrease blood flow to the area, I'm going to get more out of that 30%. But if I have no limitations, the blood flow restriction becomes a limitation to how much weight I can lift total, which means my overall perceived strain is going to be better when I have no restriction because I can lift more overall. That total amount lost with the addition of blood flow restriction is not made up for by the additional benefits of blood flow restriction. And therefore, for overall fitness, it still seems to be better to do a general workout at high load when I'm trying to work for something like hypertrophy or strength. Now, again, these experiments are not one size fits all. There's a whole lot of things that continue to evolve in research as we refine our methods, refine our statistical analysis, and we have more and more studies coming in that we compare to one another. We've talked about this in the past, the importance of reproducing a study. So, the amount of studies that we do on a matter, whether or not they use the same methods, is important because they're using different individuals, different statistical methods, and making sure that everybody is then comparing how all those results match to go, all right, was there really a difference here, or was there not? At this point in time, it seems like there's a big enough difference to be confident to say that blood flow restriction training works extremely well for people who are in the early stages of rehab. But people, once they move into the higher load stages, seem to do better without them. For general fitness, it does not seem to apply as much. However, we may be giving you updates in the future that would contradict this as more studies come out and we get more understanding over how all of this lands. It's pretty cool regardless though, and I believe at least one of our clinics we happen to have somebody, I believe that would be one of our physical therapists over at a COE clinic, who's actually certified in doing this. So if you're in a type of situation like an athletic rehab program where you need to be making your gains as fast as humanly possible, but because of the particular operation that was done or the injury you have, you're unable to lift the load that you want to in order to be accelerating as quickly, finding someone in the area who's able to do this will be an excellent option. Thank you guys very much for tuning in as always. If you have further questions in the future about some of the things that we do in our clinic or have available, or if you just want to learn more about various areas of health science, we're always happy to answer those. So feel free to drop a comment or send us a message and we'll get back to you soon. Have a great one everybody, and we'll see you next week.